Hello. I'm going on with a debriefing of this trip that I made yesterday. In this case, from Roaring Spring to our place in Dutch Corner with Bob Krasnow. We had looked at the mill. I wanted to show him this stuff, and already I was getting a different reaction from what I expected. Uh, he, it's a little hard to explain. He's not like me in a way, although maybe later I'll try to explain about that. He was raised in the city. He said every single thing he learned about raising fish and raising cattle and farming, he learned in Brazil. He went there knowing nothing about any of that stuff. Another thing I ought to remark, it was a surprise to me that when he was trained to go into the Peace Corps, one of his teachers was Frei Marcelino. Now you're going to hear more about Frei Marcelino. He's the whole he's the start of everything that happened with Peace Corps in that area. But anyway, so we were talking, and I think we might have we revisited the spring dam, and looked at that spring. And see, he looked at that water and he said, "Boy, I think you could raise trout here." And I said, "Oh yeah, they used to have trout this big in there, but the people wouldn't stop feeding them, and then overfeeding them, and then ducks came and it got to be a mess, and so they took them all out. They don't feed the fish, but people kept feeding the fish, and so there's none in there right now, but of course there could be. Well, anyway, we did that, but then I was anxious to get on the road because I wanted to show him the Southern Cove, Morrison's Cove. It identifies itself as the Southern Cove, and it is the southern part. And we went. I was anxious to show him the water-powered mills that were there. None of them still with a wheel on them. But I wanted to show him how that water is. And so we went to Woodbury first. And there the mill is standing. It's in fine shape. The dam is there, but the water wheel was inside the mill. And I assume it's gone. The machinery's gone, I know. But it was and still is a proud mill standing there. But he didn't relate to that. He said he thought he'd seen a water wheel one time in Germany or something like that. It's such a big part of my life. And he didn't know what was meant by a grist mill. See, he was from the city, from Long Island. And when he went to Brazil, that was flat land, dry land, and he worked with water a lot, irrigation. Almost everything he did had to do with irrigation, but it was pumped out of a river. And I will give you a link where you can see that, but maybe later. Anyway, we got to Woodbury and we looked at it, and I mean, to me, I'm thinking you're looking at a wonder here, Robert, but Bob. But he didn't get excited like I am. Then we went up to the place where I get my lumber. I wanted to show him the sawmill where I go to buy lumber when I have to. And right there, and again, he was curious, but not wrapped up like I am. He's different, which made it valuable. And right opposite is a bulk grocery store. Now we're in Mennonite country, and of course they all speak English in there. But we went in and actually spoke to one of the women in there that was stocking the shelves about Pennsylvania Dutch, and she was super nice. And anyway, we bought a couple little things, but I just kind of wanted to have that experience. I looked at the flour that they had, what different kinds of flour that they had. But then we went on, and I skipped the chance to see a little tiny, really ancient mill, grist mill, and nothing like these big, majestic ones. But I skipped the chance to see that because I was getting worried about time. And we went on, and then we went to a place called Waterside, which has now that's a mill that you might say was industrial. It wasn't a grist mill. It was to make blankets. And I think they made blankets all the way back maybe in the Civil War even. And the old machinery, the last time I knew, It's in that building, and the dam is there. The wheel, or it might have been a turbine. That might have been a turbine. I think it was a wheel. I couldn't see it, but I'm pretty sure it's not running. But what really alarmed me was that big building, up at the top, it was beginning to buckle a little bit up by the roof line. And when I saw that, it's one thing if the siding's all off a mill, but when you can see that the frame of the mill is in danger, I thought, oh, I gotta take action on this to see if I can energize people to try to save these mills. And that's what this part of my explanation is going to be about. Well, we went on and we went down to Loysburg, where once again there's a mill. Now that mill is standing straight. It's not endangered. The water is nowhere near it anymore. But the siding is all off it. It just, there's wood clapboard siding on there, but you can see through it and all. I went there because I wanted to see right beside it. Well, I wanted to see the mill and show it to Bob. But right beside it is a building which I think is the Cove Community Theater. Now, I'm going to have more to say about that. But anyway, I turned around, we went back, and then we headed up a road, I don't know what it's called, along which I missed a chance to show him one mill almost immediately, and this huge stone building, which I think had once been a mill as well, and it's still standing there and being used. I mean, it's fine, but there's no evidence really that it was ever a mill, but I think it was. These are water-powered grist mills now. So there was that. I missed a chance to show him where one, no, we did see it barely. And then we turned in again to another one. This is in very close proximity that was gone, but you could see where it had been. And then we took a right when we got to New Enterprise and drove over to still another mill site where you can see the breastwork of of where the water wheel was. This one's and it goes under a driveway and right underneath a house, a stone house. But it doesn't. There's no water running there anymore. But we continued up, and then there was a long white building that pretty clearly was a mill of some kind. And I couldn't tell him what it was, but I said, I don't think that was a grist mill. It might have been. I just didn't know what it was. I will find out. So we passed that one and continued on. And I think there might have been a mill or two that you couldn't really see it. They're gone, but you couldn't see the waterworks. Past a little tiny school that looks like a church, Cowan School it is, went on up to where a spring comes right out from under a house, a stone house. The house was built right over a spring. He thought that was curious. Went on, took a left, and now we're up above where there were going to be mills, but still there was water running and following it. And finally came out on the road that I had gone into Roy Spring on, and took a left and went on. And there we stopped at a store, which I had stopped at before. You barely know it's there except for a little sign. And but this was Thursday. On Wednesday it was closed, so I'd missed a couple of chances that I could have gone in there. But this was Thursday, and I thought I'm going to go in there. And there we once this had to do with the Mennonites. Now it was run by Old Order Mennonites, and we went in there to see what they had. And talked to the, I know what I want to tell you about that. Talked to the lady, but the one thing that they had that I didn't buy yet is einkorn flour. I could have bought a sack of einkorn flour that wide and that long. She said she does sourdough, of course, and cottage cheese, of course, but with the dough, with the sourdough, she has to use einkorn because her children are allergic to probably gluten. I mean, it's white bread. And I knew about that. And next time I'm there, once I've actually successfully made some some sourdough bread. I'll probably shift to einkorn myself. But I was telling her that I wish you were open Wednesday, because I go by there every day, every Wednesday, predictably, and I go there and I come back. And I said, you know, if there's anybody in this area that needs a ride to Roaring Spring and back, I'm going to go by there. And Ed, or Bob, he chimes in and she said, well, she'll spread the word. And Bob encouraged that. He said, you got to let people know, and you know, put your name somewhere. And she pulled out a piece of paper and a pencil, and I thought, okay. And I wrote my name down and phone number and a time that is predictable that I would be going by there on Wednesdays, and a time that was predictable that I would be leaving Roaring Spring. And I would be very happy to pick people up and leave people off, almost like a bus. She had said, oh, we're always looking for drivers. And I thought, aha, wonderful, because I'm probably not the only one that would be willing to give rides to these old order Mennonites if they needed them, especially if they're going along that way anyway. So that kind of excited me. And I'll have to go into that later. Well, then we went over the mountain and we came here to the farm. That'll be enough here. That was a mill tour. Bye for now.